My name is Furhan Ahmad. I am running for Assemblyman in District 66 in Lower Manhattan. And today I am here with my friend Vichal Kumar, who is a public defender for 20 years in New York City. And we are here to discuss an issue that has been a controversial topic in neighborhoods. It's been a hot topic amongst people who have a lot of curiosity behind it, is bail reform. And today we're going to discuss bail reform of Vichal, and he's going to explain to us, how things work as a public defender who's actually dealt with this, had firsthand experience dealing with it. And let me, Vichal, would you like to introduce yourself?
Sure. Well, thank you for having me. Excited to talk about bail reform. Vichal Kumar. I'm running for Congress in New York 7, and it's true. I've been working in public defense for the last 20 years in New York. So excited to have this conversation with you today.
Yeah, I'm grateful for you to be here as well. Looking forward to learning a lot from you. So tell us. Let's get right to it. What is bail? What is bail? What is bail for? No, what is bail, and where did it come from?
Yeah. So bail is part of our criminal legal system, and bail was created on the simple premise that when people are arrested, there was a presumption of innocence, and they'd have the opportunity to come to court and litigate their criminal case. But we want to make sure that they actually return to court, that they went through the court process, and that ultimately there was going to be a finding of innocence, guilt, however it shook out. But simply to keep them coming back to court, they set up bail, which was an opportunity for those that were accused to offer up some collateral in order to demonstrate to the court that they were serious about coming back, about facing their charges, about going through the process. And that was bail's sole purpose, just to make sure that people had an incentive and some, skin in the game, right? Like that they're going to put their money where their mouth is and come back to court by posting bail if the judge deemed them to be a flight risk at all, right? And if they weren't deemed to be a flight risk, then there wouldn't necessarily be bail set even. But bail was really just for those individuals that judges wanted to make sure would keep coming back to court. So it's a pretty simple premise.
Yeah. And along the way, well, that was a premise originally. Along the way, things started changing.
Yeah.
And where was that change, and when did that exactly happen? Like, is there a timestamp on this, or I feel like it's been the last few years that we started hearing about it more.
Yeah.
I'm not trying to put you on the spot
no,
here. I don't need an exact date.
Sure. A timestamp is tough, but if we want to talk about it a little bit historically, we could talk about how the United States moved to a more tough on crime stance, probably in the 70s when Nixon was president. And we started really engaging in this idea that we needed to be more harsh with our penalties, that violence was and public safety was a concern across the country. And that kind of shifted the culture of where bail was going to be in this conversation now. And over the decades since then, particularly in New York, what I think happened is the conversation stopped being about bail as a proxy for making sure that people were coming back to court, but rather became an opportunity for judges to potentially make assessments about whether people were guilty or not, and then therefore apply bail, or making discretionary assessments about whether they had feelings about whether this person was going to come back to court or not. Yeah. Let's be real. Like, so what happens is, and I think people don't always see this because you kind of watch law on TV, and what we all know, whether it's law, whether it's policing, when you watch it on TV is not actually what happens in real life. And when someone is arrested in New York, they are brought to court from the precinct that they're arrested at, and then they sit and wait, until their case is called. And if they don't have access to a lawyer, they're going to get appointed a public defender. If they have paid for a lawyer, then that lawyer will be there. And in that period of time, when they appear before the judge, that determination is made really quickly. Like, there's a couple minutes tops that a lawyer is going to make. The prosecutor is going to present their case about why they think bail should be set. The defense lawyer is going to have an opportunity to share more about why they don't think bail should be set, and the judge is going to make a decision. All that's happening in a couple of minutes.
Wow,
it's not
really
like it's not like you get all this time to talk about what this person has, what the charges are, like who this person is. And that's kind of the spirit of what bail is about, right? Bail is about, well, what do I think this person is a flight risk? What are the things that I'll think about in making that determination? Like, do they have ties to their community? Do they have family? Do they have housing? Do they have employment? But you don't actually have time for all those conversations to happen. And so I think judges started defaulting to, I'm just going to set bail because this is what we have time for. And it wasn't even if it was necessarily a personal decision by judges, but it was also kind of an indictment of the system itself. And like the system not creating space for those conversations to happen.
The judges, are they frustrated with this process? Are they, you know, I get it. Is it just, are they just overwhelmed? Or is that part of that issue as well?
Yeah, I think,
because if you're getting pressured to make a decision that quickly for someone, that could affect the rest of someone's life,
right?
And it's being made in such in such haste, right? So quickly, and are they overwhelmed? Is that one of the issues of many?
Yeah, it's definitely one of the issues, right? The court process is built on expediency, on how quickly we can move through cases, because there's always more cases coming, and judges get there are checks in place to see how big judges' dockets are, how many cases they get through, and they're also under-resourced to a degree as well. Just like every single component of the system is somewhat under-resourced, right? The DAs, prosecutors argue they're under-resourced, public defenders certainly argue we're under-resourced, judges, the court system, but police will also argue about how they're also under-resourced, right? And I think when the entire system is feeling this strain of lack of resources, then we make decisions that are much more rooted in efficiency as opposed to rooted in humanity, and trying to make assessments about people in a time frame that doesn't really allow for that conversation to happen. Like, I don't know. Imagine your life is being assessed in a 2-minute interview, and that's it. That's all you get.
Yeah, I mean, see, you break that down in such a way where I think the public needs to understand that it's not this, long drawn out process where they really looked at every detail and to make sure this person deserves should be, when it comes to setting bail. I think that is a great explanation. A lot of people don't know this, and I think we need to teach the public how the inner workings are, whether they're inefficient or not.
Yeah.
We should at least know how things are working, so we and the public could, before they get upset about how the system is, understand how it works first. And from my understanding, when someone that commits the same crime, if some people can afford the bail and the others can't. So those who could afford bail for the same crime obviously are they're released and await trial, free back home, back to work, whatever it may be. But those that cannot afford bail for the same crime are left waiting in holding in Rikers, and they're still, and now what's happening to them? They're losing their jobs, their families strained, it's affecting the mental health. And imagine, I don't know, I've never been locked up, but I can imagine it's probably a terrible experience. So I think that's something that is also, I think, needs to be known, and a lot of people are being punished for something simply because they can't afford to get out. Am I correct?
Yeah, I think you just captured it perfectly, right? That the simple problem was that people, depending on how much money they had, may or may not have to sit in jail while they're pre-trial, while they're awaiting the adjudication, while we're waiting to make an assessment about whether they're guilty or not. They were simply going to be out of jail because they had money or that they didn't, right? And that is the issue that bail reform was trying to tackle, that inequity in our society, because when we see that type of system happening, we're like, well, this doesn't make sense, right? It doesn't seem fair. And isn't court or the law is supposed to be where things are fair, and this seems unfair, so let's just try to fix it. And that in its purest form is exactly what bail reform was about, was let's just fix the thing that's broken. But I appreciate you talking about other aspects of it, right? The idea of mental health, the idea about community, and how that is and influences like bail reform conversations. And I'm curious from you, as someone who's been on the ground with New Yorkers for over 20 years, what were you seeing out there?
Well, we were seeing a lot of repeat incidents, and we were seeing where it was, one of the core parts of our platform, one of the core issues in our platform that we want to correct is mental health. And when you mix bail, or when you criminalize mental health, housing instability, and that's, I think that's, or and also people that have substance abuse that need treatment, it's totally separate things. Crime, these people are not criminals, right? They're suffering from either mental illness, they're suffering from substance abuse, they're either homeless for a reason. And when it turns into, when you're arresting people, when people end up being arrested for something that they should be treated for, you're now clogging up the system. And we saw that. I saw the 911 system was being overwhelmed with calls for mental health. And what is the 911 system really going to do other than either send them to the hospital, or they're going to probably be released back out on the street or get no treatment, handcuffed, taken to a jail cell. And then what happens when they get to a jail cell in the precinct? They have to call an ambulance. And now it's just this long, drawn-out inefficiency, waste of money. And all these people are involved for one person because the system is broken. This person never should have been brought to a jail cell to begin with. He should have been getting treatment. So see, that is where the frustration happens. And this is just, this inefficiency is just like, wearing down people. It's frustrating everyone. It's frustrating the legal system. It's frustrating our first responders. And this is where it needs to be corrected. And that's what I was seeing was it's just constantly wearing the system down more and more, which leads to frustration. It leads to people not staying on. It leads to people wanting, it leads to a strain on first responders. They're either overworked, they're underpaid, and they feel like they're not, being compensated properly for trying to manage a really difficult situation.
Yeah.
And I think that's what I saw firsthand. It's the inefficiency and waste of our 911 system and the lack of services to a very complex problem. And I think we need to fund this complex problem. And I think that's how that is the only way we can fix this.
I really appreciate the thoughtfulness and nuance that you approach this with, because so much of the conversation is about, police want this, and like people that are arrested want this, and it really rests in these binary constructs of it's this versus that. And what you just said is something that I don't think is actually talked about that much, right? Certainly we have conversations about mental health and what you're seeing out in the community, particularly as first responders, but how that impacts like first responders themselves, and like how it is that impacts their ability to do their work. Do you think there's like space in which how we're approaching being first responders and what responsibilities they have should be covered by other individuals or covered in different ways? Like, should first responders, should police be the ones responding to like mental health episodes? Like, should the FDNY be called out when the NYPD is unavailable? Like, is this the best process, or like, is there something else that we should be thinking about?
Yeah, I think that's a great question. And I could, from experience, speak on how we were, the 911 system, meaning EMS, fire department, a fire truck, fire department, because there's also FDNY EMS, police department would respond to one person, the same person, maybe 2-3 times a week, sometimes even. And what are they doing? They're out of service now. So you have 3 emergency response units responding to someone having the same person having a mental health crisis.
Wait, can I 3? Like this was awfully bureaucratic and inefficient.
In the 911 system, when the police always responds, right? 911, when there's a call for anything, the police always respond just to make sure there's no criminal or danger. So they'll always respond to every call. So that's one unit out of service responding to a call. A fire in an engine, a CFRD engine will respond, and they'll wait for an ambulance to come if someone's having either a mental health crisis on the street or they're sick. No one really is able to determine what's wrong with that person. They're not trained. And then finally the ambulance will show up and they'll determine, okay, let's just take him to the hospital. What else can we do? And that is an inefficiency of the system, because you have one ambulance, a police unit, and a fire truck, an engine, out of service for this issue. So that's making 3 different areas they're leaving 3 different areas uncovered. That's less safety. These units should be in service, ready to go to respond to a fire. The EMS unit should be ready to go for a senior having a heart attack or cardiac arrest. And the police department should have their unit covering their area, making sure it's safe, right? Because this person was failed by the system. They were left behind because they keep coming out and not getting help. Now we're making our neighborhoods less safe. And I think one of the best approaches that we have is to have a mental health response. And this is not, people will think, oh, we're trying to remove the police from this, or we're soft on crime. No, we are helping the police department, returning them to your neighborhood, covering their area so they're safer, so they're not tied up in something that mental health professionals should be dealing with. And it's going to make our neighborhood safer. And this is what I truly believe in. And I really believe that we should, like the Be Heard program, where it's EMTs, paramedics, and mental health professionals responding to these calls. And it doesn't mean the police are just, for people that are very protective of their police. And we're not here to say they're useless in this situation.
Right.
We're here to say, hey, we're helping them so they free them up so they can make your neighborhood safe.
And they can do their actual job.
They can do their actual job, and you let the others who understand how to solve this do their work. And with this, I just feel that will be so much more efficient.
Yeah.
And that's what I'm supporting in my campaign, our campaign. And I really believe in that system because everything else we've done, you sweep people up, or we're gonna sweep up encampments. What are you gonna do with that? Where are you gonna put that? Somebody else has to deal with that. People think it's just a magic wand situation where you're just gonna say, all right, abracadabra.
So they don't disappear as well.
So they don't, please make this problem disappear. But do you understand that there are people, other human beings that are really dealing with these issues as well? They're strained workforce, and it's not something that's just that you could just hide. It's something there are people dealing with it, and we also have to think about those people as well and that system.
Yeah, the way you talk about it is so much that happens before we even have a conversation about bail reform and all of the different factors that are part of this conversation. Because from my perspective, what I'm seeing is the person who now had the 3 teams respond to them and unfortunately has been arrested and now is going to come to court because they were allegedly engaging in whatever conduct they were engaging in, which brought them into the system. Pre-bail reform, this was the person that was now going to be pushed into jail. They were going to be at Rikers. And that's where the quote-unquote problem would now live, right? That now we've disappeared this person just to be responsible in another place without ever actually supporting them in being able to access and seek services or treatment or what it is that they might be interested in to help them moving forward. Because that's the way that we're going to stop this cycle, right? Because now we're just creating this cycle. Like persons, all these agencies respond, people are doing their job, individual gets arrested, they get sent to jail, they have a resolution in their criminal case, they eventually get released, and nowhere along the way did we actually help them access services that they may want, and then we're going to rinse and repeat, right? And I feel like you said you would see this people coming back multiple times, or see same people. I imagine if you were in the same neighborhood, you probably saw the same people frequently.
Yeah, you know them by first name. And you know who they are. And you could just say their name, like, oh, again, we're back. We're dealing with the same person, and this is the truth. And people knew people on a first name basis because you just dealt with them all the time. Or we're going to the same location for the same problem, and it was just at a point of just like, what are we doing? Yeah. Why are we doing this? Yeah. That has been, that was my experience of how I saw the inefficiency in the system and how mental health and lack of treatment, like you said, like you perfectly pointed out, is where the gap is. We're not treating anyone. We're not helping anyone, actually. We're just hiding them and making them someone else's problem, which I think you nailed it. And I remember responding. I remember when I was an EMT and I responded. We had a call once on the prison Rikers, prison barge almost.
Mm-hmm. The boat.
The boat, yes. and I remember going into this, pulling up in the ambulance. I worked in the South Bronx, and I forget what neighborhood exactly it was in, but I remember pulling up to this enormous boat, and you're just like, wow, this is a prison. There's people in this thing, right? I'm like, this is kind of crazy. And going in there, and it it was like being in Grand Central Terminal during rush hour. It was just so many bodies of people in there, and I remember just feeling like really like, wow, who's managing all this? Like,
Yeah.
what is going on here? Like, is it are all these people like, are they all criminal? Like, what is going on here? It was just an eye-opening experience as to what is happening, and it was just something that really stuck with me, and it made me think a lot about how are we dealing with people. Who are people getting court dates? Are they seeing the judge? Are they getting their trials? How long are people in this place? That's what I was thinking about. And this is where I feel it also gets really. I'm not here to dismiss people who feel unsafe. If people are saying we feel unsafe in the neighborhood, I'm not going to say that. Oh no, you're wrong. I'm not going to gaslight them or try to. If they feel unsafe, they have the right to feel unsafe. Tell us why. What is going on? What are the conditions that you're concerned about? And I do believe that there are some people that should not be released back out for if they're repeat violent offenders, and but our judges, from my understanding, don't have that authority. Am I correct? That the judges in New York State don't. They can only assess if someone's a flight risk, not a danger, or not a danger.
Yeah.
How do you feel about that? Do you feel there's a way to find a dangerous standard or narrow it in some way where judges have the ability to make a decision, the right tools to make the right decision, so people feel more safe that, okay, we're not being dismissed. There are people that are dangerous that are not being released. What do you think about that?
Yeah, the dangerousness standard has been a big topic of conversation in bail reform because, right, by the letter of the law, the judges are not supposed to be considering dangerousness when they're making bail assessments. Rather, this is supposed to be on flight risk. And I'll acknowledge that New York State is the only state in the country that does not have a dangerousness standard.
Wow, that's
there's also a dangerousness standard in the federal system as well.
that's really interesting.
And so New York has been the holdout. It has been the holdout for a long time. This is not a recent thing, to be very clear.
Yeah.
This has been the case since at least the 70s when thinking about bail laws in New York. This has been the case consistently under Republican and Democratic administrations, time and again. New York State legislature has rejected a dangerousness standard. And I think part of the reason why that is because judges, even though they're only supposed to be considering whether someone is a flight risk, they still have a lot of tools at their disposal right now, even under the current bail laws after rollbacks and where we are today. Judges have a lot of discretion when it comes to setting bail. Depending on the seriousness of the offense, they still have the opportunity to set bail that isn't going to make another assessment about dangerousness. Mm-hmm. And so the reason why I would say, look, as considering my profession and my stance on this,
please be honest.
I would not advocate for a dangerousness standard, really just for two reasons. Mm-hmm. One is that, as we talked about, the amount of time that is available at an initial assessment for the judges, the prosecutor, and for the defense to make their case about bail is very limited. And now giving judges greater latitude in doling out really punishment in a forum that doesn't allow for there actually to be a full evidentiary conversation about whether or not this assessment about dangerousness should be applicable to this individual, whether someone is actually dangerous or just we have a perception of danger, you're not going to have time to make that happen. That's I think we've seen that when judges are given more and more discretion. Backing up for a second, do you know what most judges are afraid about? What most judges are afraid about is waking up the next morning and being in the New York Post because they let somebody out of custody who allegedly committed some other crime, because the New York Post will make sure to blast that judge, right?
Yes,
they want to protect against that. And
of course,
that's an understandable concern for them. Mm-hmm. So I think when given an opportunity to have more discretion for dangerousness, you can feel a natural sense to err on the side of, well, I'll just assess bail because I don't want to be in the news, and I don't want to be viewed as soft on crime, right? Because we know politically when someone is viewed soft on crime,
Yeah.
it's really hard to come back from that, right?
Yeah.
Like that's a, like
All it
that's a
takes is
label.
one.
Yeah, it
All it
takes
takes is
once.
one incident.
That's
Yeah,
your label.
that's it.
That
Yeah.
is you. So
Yeah.
judges want to avoid that.
Yeah.
So I'm concerned about giving judges more discretion when they have tools already. Like it's not like the law prevents them from assessing bail. They can.
Interesting. Okay.
And the other thing is that we still know that our criminal legal system has incredibly disproportionate outcomes for our Black and brown communities. And if you're a Black and brown individual that has been arrested, even after bail reform, you're still likely to have a 50% higher bail amount than other communities.
Yeah.
And so now giving judges more discretion when we still haven't solved the discrimination that's inherent in our system, I think is probably going to impact a certain community. And I think studies have backed that up. Also, like, I agree with you that when people feel unsafe, we should validate those. You have to validate those feelings, right? Because that's a perception.
Yes.
And I think sometimes reform-minded folks get caught in the trap of, well, maybe you feel more unsafe, but this study done by this academic institution says that you're not unsafe, so therefore you should believe this study, right?
Yeah, yeah.
And I guess like logically maybe that makes sense, but that's not how people react, right? That's not like people
feel what they feel.
They feel what they feel. They have emotions, the vibes. Like, well, what is it that they're sensing? And so we have to acknowledge that is certainly the case. But that doesn't mean that we have to then automatically change the rules to create more inequity in the system when there are already levers there. So it's not like judges don't have the opportunity to do that. So unfortunately, like dangerousness is not for me, but would love to hear your thoughts on it.
Well, I feel that just simply because from what I saw and heard from people on the street, it's a feeling. People feel unsafe.
Yeah.
And it's not one person, it's a lot of people. And I'm not one to dismiss them. Why are you feeling unsafe? Because, I don't feel comfortable walking down the street. But then again, is it because it's someone that's committing a crime, or is it because someone is mentally ill wandering the streets and they're unpredictable and you feel unsafe, or is it someone that's probably sleeping on the street and you just don't know? Like, there's different reasons. I think people are pulling all that together and feeling unsafe because they're seeing a broken system where people that need help are not getting help. And I'm not trying to this is just my take. Like, yes, if there's someone that's committing a crime, somebody's sticking people up with a gun or robbing people or assaulting them, it is what it is. But are people feeling unsafe because there's someone that's unpredictable to them because they're suffering from a health crisis, a drug use crisis, or that's something that we really need to address is like, what exactly is causing you to feel unsafe, right? And we're not dismissing it. If someone's committing a crime, then absolutely it should be addressed. If someone's out here, threatening you or hurting people, then well, of course, we're not going to turn the other way because that's irresponsible. Yeah. But
and in those cases, like those are the types of offenses that judges have full opportunity to apply bail, right? Yeah. Those like violent offenses, those assault offenses, and I think sometimes people think about bail reform being like, well, if somebody murdered somebody, they could get out on bail. And I'm like, well, these are actually the whole classification of offenses that judges have a lot of discretion to assess bail in.
I feel also, just being a New Yorker, I think social media has also been a big player in this. People sharing certain videos of certain incidents that happen, which of course, whether it could be someone someone on the subway suffering from mental health who should be getting treatment, but now people feel unsafe. Someone that's got pushed in front of a train, which is a tragedy.
Right.
And that comes up a lot. And it's like, where did we go wrong? Was this person a criminal? Was this person that should have been behind bars? Was this a person that should have been getting treatment? Like, where did the system fail that we allowed that this happened? Because you know what, for people's families who lost someone, I could only imagine, how terrible it is to lose someone in that fashion, in that way. But I think that people feeling unsafe is also they're just grouping everything into one and treating it like thinking that this is all bail related, but it's not. It's lack of service related. It's lack of manpower. It's lack of workforce related. it's stress on our workers related, on the people that are dealing with this. So I do feel that it's such a layered issue, and it's not just bail reform all around. But now I also think people trust statistics. People love numbers, right?
They do.
They love numbers when they work for them. All right. But people love to hear numbers like, oh, well, these are the numbers. This is showing that. But if it's something, so what are the numbers? You don't have to have the number on the top of your head, but do you think statistically people that are released on bail, like what is the rate that they're committing crimes again, or is there, do you have an opinion on that?
Yeah, the studies that have been done about bail reform in New York in particular have indicated that even after bail reform was passed and we were, more people were allowed to be released from custody and have opportunities to fight their cases while not sitting in jail, that there were actually no negative impacts on public safety. There wasn't an uptick in crime statistically, or even in people's perception. And so that would indicate to me that this is largely a success, right? If public safety isn't going to be negatively impacted by having more people be released while they're in their pretrial, innocent until proven guilty stage, then that should be a success, right? But so even that's available statistically, but that I don't think has necessarily changed people's perception, right? Mm-hmm. And that is the challenge. Yes, like we love data so long as it sings our tune, and then when it doesn't, all of a sudden, well, it's not data, right? It's the feeling, or it's the vibes. And I went to you mentioned incidents on the subway, and my mind immediately flashed back to the pandemic in New York and sitting in 2020 when, I don't know about you, like I wasn't really taking the subway very much in the early part of the year, but every now and again you would see the news report about an incident on the subway. Mm-hmm. I keep remembering my family that didn't live in New York, or friends that didn't live in New York, being like, "Are you safe? Like, do you take the subway?" And I'm like, "I'm fine, right?" Like this is, but because ridership was so low, like all of a sudden it seemed like this was just happening all the time. So sure, statistically we're like bail reform, no issue, no problems, with no negative impact on public safety. And then people are like, "Hey, did you see that thing on TikTok?" And it's like, well, I don't I don't know how is it that you can have this conversation when it is really perception, and what people are thinking and feeling, not necessarily what the data says. But the data has been in support of bail reform being an effective tool that has not made our communities less safe, and has given individuals the opportunity to be out of custody while their criminal cases are pending. Because for reasons that you said earlier, so much of the work that I did was working with people that had interactions with the criminal legal system, but were losing their job, but were losing their housing because of it. We're going to have family separation that arose. And so much of that occurred because they were sitting in custody. Like imagine you have a job and you get arrested and you can't call your boss, and you miss a shift, and what ends up happening? You lose your job. Right? That's just the end. And then sometimes, like, if you get out right away, maybe you can make a phone call and like explain and then get back to work. But if you've been sitting in custody, even with a low bail amount, like, you're going to lose that job, and that job may have been really hard for you to get. Right? And especially now, we're in an incredibly competitive labor marketplace. And that's what it's protecting against that by having bail reform, but you can only do so much with vibes. TikTok very powerful. So
it is. It really is. I mean, I think some people just think that's all that happens here, and I get it, because those videos go viral. People see that one video, but we'll walk around the streets all day. Everything will be fine, and one incident's just amplified over and over, and it's shared. And unfortunately, that's just the way of the world. That's just the way things work right now. But I think we need to also highlight the success stories. I think we need to highlight those that were able to, that were able to make it beyond the system. And I think we've also done a poor job in that. If that is the truth, right? If the numbers are not, I'm sorry, not the numbers, but if people are like they're not committing crime. Like, we need to amplify those as well, so people don't think we're just in a doom loop. And I think that we just need to do a better job of sharing those stories. Just as much as people love to share stories about, oh, look at this incident, how about there should be a way to show people how successful it is, if that's what you're saying. And I trust you because you've done this for a long time, and I really do believe that. But another thing is, like you were talking about costs and people losing their jobs. It's already some tough costs. It's so expensive to live in the city. It's hard to get by, even with a minimum wage job, 2 jobs, 3 jobs. But speaking of cost, how much does it cost the system, right, to have one person be in awaiting trial? Like, that should be enormous. That should be a concern itself. Overall, the cost of the inefficiency of the system itself, the ambulances, the ERs, the jails, the people required to deal with this issue, like it is, the Medicaid costs, everything. I could only imagine the numbers. It would be this inefficiency is more expensive than the solution. I'm hoping.
It is. I don't have the current statistic in front of me, but it was something like $150 to $175 a day to keep somebody in custody at Rikers.
Wow.
That's a lot of money, and that adds up really, really quickly. And this is so when we're thinking about costs, like the system is bearing the cost in some way, shape, or form in a situation in which somebody is held in custody. There's first responder costs, there's court costs. Then we add on the most expensive part of that equation, probably, which is the jail costs. And versus what does it cost for us to be able to provide services, whether that's treatment services or whether that's basic assistance services. Oftentimes is much cheaper. It's much more efficient. And governments in New York are certainly looking at this, but like governments across the country are also looking at this and assessing how much they spend on the criminal legal system and how much of that money is dedicated purely to incarceration versus services. And that ratio is way out of whack, right? We're not surprised that most of the money is spent on incarceration as opposed to services. But I think governments are wising up to trying to make assessments about whether it's worth it, right? Like, what's the ROI on this? Like, what's the impact? And making determinations that the costs far exceed what the benefit is. But then we get back to the problem, which is that, sure, like, let's talk about costs and we can have nuanced conversations about that. But the first time an incident happens, that's what carries the conversation, right? Like, you can talk about bail reform not negatively impacting public safety and things stayed exactly the same, but it doesn't really matter if somebody feels something or sees something, because then the whole conversation gets derailed. But cost is an important thing, and cost is something like the city should be thinking about. Like, where do we want to spend the limited amount of resources that we have? Not that, obviously New York City has a lot of resources, but they are still limited in some way, right? They're capped. We saw this with the mayor working on the budget, and like, how is it that you're going to allocate your resources? And is this what we want to be spending our money on as a society, is having people sit in jail while they're presumed to be innocent, while they're awaiting their court dates, when statistically it doesn't show that it'll negatively impact us? Do you want to dedicate it to other services? Or do you want to help individuals who are struggling to just get by in New York, and like shift it to other resources? What do you think?
I think I agree. I feel like I just think of a number of people that are stuck in the system, that are in jail for misdemeanors, or some people have made mistakes. Most people, I believe, make a mistake or do something and are not going to do it again. Of course, there are going to be people that commit crimes and are repeat offenders. That's a different story. But I feel a lot of people are just in the system, stuck in the system, and it's costing. There's such a drain, and it's not getting anywhere. What are we doing with this person that's sitting in a cell? What is that going to do? What are we doing with this person that's just sitting at Rikers? Like, are we being proactive in trying to find the solution to what's going on with this person? Is it, again, comes right back to the same thing. Is Is it a mental health issue? Is it a housing issue? What was the crime? Why did he commit it? What would solve that problem to make this person um, you know, to be able to not be a repeat offender? What is the reason why this happened, right? And I just think that we are not doing a good job of that. I feel that's where the resources should go, right? To give people a chance, whether it's job training. Maybe somebody needs to, like an education. They never had an opportunity to go to school. Maybe they have some kind of training so they could work and feel like have some kind of dignity. And I think when people start losing dignity and hope, people choose drastic options that are, that don't have a good end result. So I think we haven't been doing a good job of that as well. And I think that's where the waste is going. We're wasting all this money on just keeping someone behind bars. How about just giving them an opportunity to, everyone loves, everyone loves like movies where people, oh man, this person was in prison and they came out and they changed their life around, and oh, what a great story. Oh, this person was locked up, but you know what? Now he's making bread and now he's, and now he's a baker, and people love that story. So why don't we back it up? Society, I feel everyone loves that story where someone who has made a mistake, made a bad decision, but has turned their life around and done better. And I think we all love that story. So let's nurture that. Let's make it happen for real then, and that's just the way I feel about it. But I do believe that money that's being wasted should be going to services that we need rather than just somebody sitting behind bars because they can't afford to pay bail.
Yeah.
And I think, especially in a time of cost, that's something to talk about.
Love the redemption story. Who doesn't love the redemption story?
Everyone loves a redemption story. Everyone loves the underdog. Everyone loves that, and like, even again, social media comes up. People are sharing, oh, look at this. This guy was in jail, but look what he did with himself. It's great. It feels good. People love it. It feels good to see people change their lives for the better. And I just think that's just the way people are. I think we all love that too, and we would love to see more of it.
I love how you said dignity. Dignity, I think, is a word that gets used a lot but doesn't mean much. But in fact, the way you're talking about it in terms of dignity of employment, I would also posit like dignity of home, and how much dignity is something that we all want and value without, whether we're recognizing it or not, but it's something that we think about, and that is something that is like stripped away in this environment a lot right now. Being arrested, having to go through processing and getting fingerprinted and getting transported to court, and then if you don't have bail set on you, getting transported to Rikers, and that process of being searched and now being put into prison clothes is incredibly dehumanizing, right? You lose all of your dignity in that moment. But also, like, when our systems don't equip people to be able to access long-term housing, you mentioned employment programs or workforce development programs, right? So if we're not supporting community members in accessing employment, and they're struggling with having a job and working, unfortunately, minimum wage jobs. Even in New York, at our minimum wage, that's so much higher than the federal government. That's something I'll try to fix in Congress, but it is.
You will. You will.
But even then, that's not a number that we know. You can't afford living in New York and working minimum wage is going to be really challenging.
Yeah.
And particularly when you're not, and maybe you're not invested in the job, and so what's dignity look like in that context? Is that what people are seeking? And I think most people would say no. That's not what I want. What I want is something that is mine, that I feel invested in, or that I have ownership of, or something. And so much of the conversation misses that and misses what dignity looks like. And so I really appreciate you putting that out there, and because it's something I think what people are looking for without even necessarily knowing it. I think hearing you talk about it, it's like, oh yeah, dignity. That's I want to do my job. I want to hang out with my family. I want to spend time with my friends, enjoy my life. But that's kind of what they're seeking.
Yeah, and if you don't have that, first step. I remember during our walking tours, talking to people. I remember going to a an organization here and it was for people with mental health challenges who are trying to get help to get back into everyday life, getting a job, getting ownership of a home. And I remember speaking to someone, and they said simple. It was like one of the most mind-blowing things, but it was so simple. He said, "I came to this place, and I got a hot meal, and that changed everything. Getting a hot meal in my stomach made me change my life. It made me start thinking like, wow, let me start thinking about getting a job now. Let me start thinking about actually having a home and wanting that and making myself better and giving myself that chance." And it just started with that. That's an act of dignity, right? Just to have a hot meal in your stomach, just to have a roof over your head, just to get mail, just to have an ID, like little things like that will make you feel like you belong, right? I mean, isn't that what we all achieve here? Like, I mean, I remember, people come to this country, even people that immigrate here, right? Like they want to have a home. They want to have their ID card. They want to feel like, wow, I made it. Look at that. I got my driver's license. What an amazing accomplishment. Like these are all simple things. I feel everybody just wants the same thing. Everybody wants a home. Everybody wants to be healthy. Everyone wants access to education and just be happy, right? And if we're not doing our best to make sure everyone's getting at least a chance at that, then we're failing, and then we're going to see the bad results of it, right? And the negative results of that, of not investing in dignity. And that's why I do believe it's really important, And I remember when I was a police officer, I wasn't a police officer that long. I remember everyone who I arrested. I not remember all of them, but I treated everyone really well. I treated them like I'm not that but I just remember everyone at the end would always say, "Thank you, officer. Thank you for treating me. Thank you for treating me with respect." And I think that was probably one of the most rewarding things I heard. And that career was, even those people, whatever they did, they would still thank me because they felt like, all right, and maybe that will set them off in a right path and being like, you know what, I'm still respected. Somebody's still respecting me. And I hope that they change the direction where they were heading, And I think that was something that really stood out to me as well. And I took a lot of pride in that because I still feel like, we don't know what people are going through. And we have to be cautious of that. And I think that's a lot of people are struggling. And just wanted to share that.
I think,
this is what I've heard.
yeah, I think like, what have you been hearing when it comes to, like, you brought up dangerousness standard, and so I was just curious as to what it is that you've been hearing from your community on this conversation, and you can share, and then I can respond with what I think the current state of the law is. Hopefully I'm right. If I'm wrong, we'll edit it later.
Yeah.
So we were talking about dangerousness, and I was curious. You've spent a lot of time with community members and at forums and on the streets and the park, and I'm curious as to like what those conversations have looked like in terms of bail reform and what people are like concerned about when it comes to it.
Yeah, people are concerned about, of course, public safety. About, like we spoke earlier, I don't feel safe in the street at nighttime. And in our community, I've heard, of course, there's a issue with drug dealing and drugs and people using them. Though that's where is the criminality in that kind of vagueness when it comes to open drug use, which people feel like is dangerous. People are doing it in the public. There are people walk by, there are needles on the street. That's something that I've heard concerns about, but I've also heard concerns about domestic violence. I've heard what is being done for people that are repeat offenders when it comes to domestic violence incidents, and how are we dealing with that as when it comes to if somebody's being prosecuted or not, or they're being re-released.
Yeah, when you work in public defense, you work with people that have allegedly committed crimes, but also many that have been the victims as well. So certainly have worked with a lot of TB survivors, and I think there's the law and what judges are allowed to do, but there's also a conversation that needs to be had around what are the services that we are providing survivors as well, right? Mm-hmm. We have so many great nonprofit organizations, and we certainly see this in the South Asian community a lot, that are the ones that are that are really supporting survivors and providing them services, which on some level is also a slight indictment on the failure of our system to be able to offer really comprehensive services or maybe even protection on some level.
Yeah.
So what are the resources and services we're providing there? But the law, as currently exists, the bail reform, where bail sits right now, as I mentioned, judges have discretion for certain types of offenses, and obviously murder, but any type of violent offenses, arson, threats of violence, conspiracy to commit violence, are part of as is there are protections around domestic violence as well. So if there is somebody accused of or being a repeat offender, judges have discretion to set bail already. So again, like that opportunity is available to them. The law allows judges to utilize bail in those situations without, again, introducing a new standard into it. And I think that it's a good example of what people's perception is about what's happening in these types of cases versus what the law actually allows for. And the law allows judges to set bail in repeat DV situations.
Well, we've talked a lot about where the system could be better, where we got to see improvements. But what part of the system do you think we're doing great at? What is working really well? Don't worry, this could be edited out.
What is working well? I think what is working well is that a lot of people care about the system being better.
Okay, all right.
What I actually think works well in the system, I don't know, right? How do we define what the system is? Is it just the criminal legal system? Does it extend beyond that?
Yeah.
And statistically, New York is safer than it has been, right? Arrests are down, like crime's down. So you would say that the system is then working because crime is down. But those of us, I think, who have been in the system or worked and seen the system up close and personal would argue that, well, actually, like there are a lot of things that don't work really well, right?
Yeah.
It's under-resourced in places or resources are misallocated. And, how it is that we treat people is very different based on what they look like. And so there's lots of ways that I think the system can improve. I also, unfortunately, I'm always the type of person that's like, well, until it's perfect, I won't say that it's great. This is just the
there's always room for improvement.
There's just the ethos that I have. I'm always like, well, if I'm a work in progress, then everything that I look at is also a work in progress. So how can we continue to make it better? I think the fact that we're having these conversations is a strong indicator of the fact that there's a lot of people who care and care not just about the system, but care about our communities, right? And care about what people are feeling and what people need. And that to me is the strongest indicator that, well, at least that's something good that is absolutely happening.
Okay.
What's working well for you?
Well, this is a tough question. Well, I think what's working well is, even though our 911 system is not equipped to handle every issue, I do feel that we have an amazing group of first responders who care about their work, who are fantastic at their jobs, and who really want the city to do better, and they really do genuinely care, and they're just doing a fantastic job. I think we're doing really well in that department. If anything, I feel that we are prepared really well to handle, not like mental health emergencies like we discussed, but I do feel that I have a lot of trust in our first responders. I'm not being biased because I wasn't. I say it because I was there and I've seen the people that work there, and the amount of care that they put into their training, into how they relate, their relationships with the community, and even if some people may feel that there are certain first responders that don't care, I could assure you that 99.9% of them do. And they love the communities that they work in, and they would do anything to help. So I think that's what we're doing right. I believe in that, and I also believe in the extension of that system also to people like you, public defenders who do care, about what happens to people and who do care about people's civil rights. It's not just about safety; it's also about people's rights, right? That's what one of the most important things. That's one of this country's gifts to us, right? Is that there is a system available for where your civil rights should be protected, and I feel that the people that are in place that are doing that job are also responsible for making, and I commend them as well. And I know, like you're saying, it's not. There's always a work in progress, but I know everyone's really doing their best, and there's good people out there who do care. So that's my take on it.
Yeah, I mean, if they're all like you, then definitely there are good people out there. I trust, I trust in that. We feel. I think anybody would be lucky to have you as the person that came out to them, because the way you talk about community, the way you talk about how you treat people, I think is a strong indicator of who you are. And
I think that's the advantage you and I have. We've been there in those rooms. We've been with people that are at their worst moment.
Yeah.
I think that is the difference maker. And I think that's what's also missing is we need people that have actually been on the ground with people at their worst time. Not a story they heard, but have actually been there. And I think that I think that's something that we both bring to the table.
Yeah, I agree. We need more of that. We need more of those voices in the rooms that are setting our policies. Mm-hmm. So, Furhan, you're running for state assembly. This is incredibly exciting. And as we talked about, having people in those spaces that have been on the ground, that have done the work, that have been with people in their toughest moments to help us set what the policies and what the laws should be for these systems, I think is an incredibly exciting opportunity. So tell me, what you can do in Albany?
Well, I really loved our conversation, and I'm really glad that you went deep into explaining the danger standard and what it means to you and how it falls into place in what we've discussed today. And I want to continue looking at that and you taking what I heard from you, someone that's actually been on the ground and been doing the work, and seeing how it is, if it's even necessary or not. But I have to continue doing the work in that. But what I plan on doing in Albany, it's everything that I've seen that isn't working. It's about preventing emergencies before they happen. If we can do that, we will alleviate so many of the issues, right? Preventing emergencies when it comes to the mental health crisis. It will prevent certain issues that may be perceived as crime, housing instability. People who have a roof over their head won't be living on the street. They won't be committing crimes or doing other things to survive. And I think those are issues. Also, when it comes to people having opportunity, like instead of like workforce development, like we discussed, more access to schooling. I truly believe in that. That is, I think, the root of where society will improve is if we invest in our people, whether they're successful or already had an advantage or those that are working uphill. I think we have to give everyone that chance. And I think that is what I want to do in Albany. I want to give everyone a chance who hasn't had that chance. And this isn't soft on crime, or this isn't a weak way of approaching things. This is being smarter and trying to find solutions. And I am all about finding solutions at this point. And we've gone too long where we haven't. We've been focusing on arguing over things rather than finding solutions. And I think it's time we stop arguing and get to the solutions and get people help that they need.
That sounds amazing. I think the city, the state would be so lucky to have you there. And we're excited to get you there.
Thank you. I'm also excited for you and your congressional run. I love it. I think you're the right man for the job.
Thank you.
Yeah.
You as well.